Here we have the candidates for... Oh, 2012, what's awkward. We have the candidates for Unions and Societies Officer, left to right, Johnny, Dexter, PJ and Charlie. As you know, I set them a question yesterday, so they've had 24 hours to answer it. And so the question was, USO is an amalgamation of positions that serve Castle in different scopes. With regards to the role of the USO, what are the JCR's priorities and how are you the best candidate to serve it?
Hi guys, I'm Johnny, and I saw this question and I spent a lot of time trying to think of an answer for it, and I did a lot of drafts and I didn't like any of them, and in the end I didn't manage to print off what I had written, so I don't have any bit of paper. But for me, this question, I'm going to start from the end of it, which is essentially boasting. I'm not very good at boasting. I'm good at lots of things, but boasting isn't one of them. And I think the two things that you need to be able to do this role are determined and like a dog headbutting a brick wall, like just able to keep going and get things done, and to be organised, to make sure that you're on top of everything. And I think if you can do just those two things, then you're fine. So for me, I think that those are two things that I can do, and I am determined. I do just keep going and keep going. I never quit at anything, which I don't think anyone would ever say that about me. And I'm pretty organised. Like I'm pretty good at knowing where everything is and where I am. So that's why I think I'd be good for the role. In terms of the priorities of JCR, I think it's a representative role, yes, so it's about representing the views of the JCR, but it's also a role which is essentially about knowing everyone. I think you've got to know a lot of people, and you've got to know a lot of things about a lot of clubs in order to do the role. And I think the priorities lie in having someone who is friendly, who's approachable, and who keeps themselves on top of everything. And so the priorities of JCR are to have that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the end of my question. It's sort of finished on a bit of a downer, but I'll pass over to Dexter now. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Dexter. I think first and foremost, the priorities of the JCR lie internally for the JCR, which I believe this year is very fractured. I believe as a college and a collegiate body in terms of the student life and student priorities and things like that, I think we're very slack in terms of participation in societies and clubs in general, or at least more than one. I believe we're such a strong college, artistically, dramatically, musically, in the sporting way. I believe we should appreciate each other more for that. I believe a representation of, well, yourself within your own sport is key, as well as representation to other sports. I believe that the reputation between football and rowing, between rugby and hockey, I believe no one shows any share of accomplishment or achievement with each other. I think we're such a strong college in that sense, and yet such a weak college in that sense as well. No one goes and supports another team. No one goes and attendance for big band and attendance for darts and attendance for dramatic plays you put on is quite poor overall. Considering we're such a close-knit college, you've got so much to be proud of. I don't think we appreciate each other enough. That's why I think the priority should lie internally first and foremost. We should try and recreate that unity which we should all share. Cast-Hatfield Day is our biggest day of the year in a sporting manner, and yet attendance for every other event was so poor. Rugby was the last game of the day. They had attendance of 15 people. I think that's shockingly poor for a college of our size and our unity. That's why I think first and foremost, priorities lie with fixing the problems within the JCR. I think the DSU has so much potential for itself, but they need to have a total revolution in the DSU currently. The DSU preaches nothing towards the student body of Castle as we know it at the moment. There's no communication between the DSU and college. There's no communication of our views necessarily towards the DSU Council as a whole, I don't think. I think in terms of actual feedback towards the student body, I think it's quite poor this year. I think I'd be such a strong contender for the job. I care passionately about sports and societies, and I'm a member of so many of them. If I had more artistic ability, if I had more musical ability, I'd be a member of big bands, I'd be a member of a dramatic society, but it's just not where my talents lie. I play football for Castle now, I'm B team captain currently. I play tennis at university. I'd be very passionate towards improving publicity within the college, because I think that's crucial for us to remain unified as a college.
Hi guys, I'm PJ, for those of you who don't know me. I think first and foremost the priority of this new role should be consolidation and establishing a firm foundation. I don't want to try and achieve anything drastic or make any promises right here or right now that are unrealistic or unachievable. No one really knows how the role's going to work in its first year. Yes, we've got the blueprint of the roles that have been merged together, but combining all of them together is an unknown quantity. No one has a huge idea of how it's going to work. I think the most important thing is not trying to achieve anything new. I think college works fantastically well as it is. Yes, there's lots of little areas it can improve on. That's the same for every single year. But I think the most important thing in the first year is consolidation. On another level though, like I say, college works brilliantly at the moment. I think the next most important step in terms of what the role actually does is representation. I think at the moment the DSU and our representation in it, Kev's done a great job this year and it's improved from the year before, but there's definitely room for improvement there. And in terms of the student body knowing what's actually going on with the DSU and with Team Durham, that does require a little bit of participation within college, but it's things like getting the message across that attendance here of a handful of people within college directly affects its way up towards the DSU. Decisions made here directly affect students, not just next year, not just right at the moment, but in 4 or 5 years' time, in terms of the way the DSU is run, especially with the way the university is going. Who knows what they're going to do to colleges in setting up a campus, or goodness knows what's going to happen. And I think it's really important. Yes, there's 700 of us here in the JCR, but that out of the total student body of about 11,000 is not much at all. If we are a strong voice within the DSU, then the university are going to stand up and take notice of us an awful lot more. Why am I good for this role? I take part in a wide range of things within college. I'm absolutely passionate about college. But at the same time, I think the DSU has a lot to offer. I'll stick my hand up and be brutally honest and say I've not taken advantage of all the DSU has to offer, and I think that should change for every single person within college. I think DSU should complement Castle. We shouldn't compete with it. We should make the most of everything we've got here in Castle and also make the most of the DSU as well.
Hi there, I'm Charlie. I don't think you should think about this role as an amalgamation of several soon-to-be defunct positions, but rather as the USO, as a new, exciting, clearly quite appealing role that does lots of things inside college and outside of it. That's how I'd split up our priorities, internal and external. And actually, I don't think we need to prioritise. I think both are as important as each other. I would put all of my effort and do both of them to the best of my ability. Inwardly, of course, I'd be looking after the accounts of the various societies, now that they're all in the one JCR current account. That's something I've had experience of, looking after the money for Tough Guy, for instance, keeping on top of the money going in and going out. Clearly, this time there would be a lot more margin for error. There's the potential for people to overspend by hundreds of thousands of pounds. So I think I would set aside a few hours a week to do things like a lecture and sit there and keep on top of it on a week-by-week basis. I would as well be responsible for the various societies and sports teams in college. I disagree with Dexter here. I don't think we have a problem with participation, but I've been thinking about it, and something that occurs to me is that at the moment it's a bit like if you miss the boat in the October of your first year, you won't be doing something for the next year or even the next 3 years. That's why I've suggested that I would put on a refreshers fair in January at the start of Epiphany term, so that people could come and and sign up again to things that they missed out on first time. I don't think it will work for every society. Like a lot of the big sports teams have teams set and registered and that sort of thing, but smaller sports and non-sporting societies are always looking to attract new people. Something else I could think I could do for the societies in college would be to put around a weekly sports report. It's something we had last year that's fallen by the wayside a bit. I think it would be the role of the USO to do that, and I think people will be really interested to hear about sports results, to hear as well about what uni standard sports players are doing and even international sports players are doing, because we do have some outstanding sportsmen in college that people perhaps don't notice. And another advantage of that would be that I would be in contact with all the sports teams and sports captains anyway, and so if they had an issue that they needed to be brought up with Team Durham, I would be in regular contact with them anyway. Because of course, looking outwards, it would be my job to represent all of you to Team Durham and to the DSU. We tend to, I think, be a bit adverse to the DSU as a college, and we sort of think we're a bit unusual in that often. I think we think that Castle are less keen on the DSU than other colleges. To be honest, I don't think that's true at all. The DSU has fallen out of favour with pretty much every college. But the stuff I do with Duck, for instance, I know that the DSU can provide some really exciting opportunities, and it will be my job to publicise that. From my experience, the best way to do that is not by just sticking up a few posters, but by doing it one-on-one, person to person, and persuading people that you know might be interested about the great options that are available. I know the new DSU president, Archie Dallas, quite well, and I spoke to him a few days ago about this. And he says that the DSU shouldn't be there to replace parts of college. I don't think anybody in the DSU thinks that, but rather to complement what we can't do, to provide support or training or other opportunities. Just in a very simple way, they're doing up the DSU building in the next few years, spending £10 million on it. We're very restricted for space here. There are lots of things other colleges have that we can't fit in. I think it will be my job to liaise with them, and then maybe say if we thought we wanted a student-run shop or a specialised drama area, then we could find room for that in the DSU, and I could lobby for that. Those are the sorts of benefits that I think the DSU can provide externally, although I would do that in tandem and with equal effort to all the stuff we do in college, to the best of my ability and with all my effort.
Okay, we have a question from the floor. Lily.
How important do you see the relationship between USO and JCR Treasurer?
Very apt, I suppose. I believe the role will be, well, I think the relationship should be very close. I think, well, basically the job of the USO is to, relay the information of the sport clubs and societies back to the Treasurer in punctual fashion, responsible fashion. I think the relationship should be set up first and foremost by the Treasurer. I believe that she should inform one of us for what we should be doing in particular, when she wants her deadlines, things like that. And it's up to us then to respond to her calls. She isn't top dog at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's massively important, Lily. At the end of the day, the USO next year will be directly responsible to the Treasurer and the JCR in terms of management of accounts. And if things go slightly awry, then, or even massively awry, whatever it might be, both people need to know what's happened and need to have a massive understanding. It's not just a case of that little bit of the accounts and the dealing with the clubs and societies is the USO's job. It's a case of, yes, that's true, but the Treasurer needs to know exactly what's going on there, because if something does go wrong or someone's got a question, then both people need to know exactly what's going on. So it needs to be constant communication, constant talking, and liaising and making sure people know what's going on.
I'd agree with all that. I think a close relationship is very important. It's important to remember that any of us would report to Lily on the financial matters. And for me at least, I know that she would have to show me the ropes, because I do an English degree. I am perfectly capable with sums and money, I think, but it's something that you have a lot more experience in than certainly I do. And I think I'd have to work very closely with you on that. That said, I'm sure that I know the value of money, particularly the nutritional value, for those of you who were here a few weeks ago. And I'm sure that I could do the job together with Lily perfectly well.
I think a very important part of this role is to take a lot of the pressure off the treasurer. And so I think for me, my relationship with you would be very important, but I would want to do my own thing. Like, not to do my own thing, but I would know what I had to do for my job, and I would want to do that. I would send you the accounts every week. The system they have at the moment is not perfect. I would work on trying to improve it with you. But for me, like, I don't see that there's a lot of working together that the Treasurer and the USO would have to do. I think that when it comes down to it, it's kind of the point of having it as an executive position rather than as Chair is doing it at the moment is so that a bit of that responsibility can be taken away. And so I would want to try and help to take that away, but at the same time I would want to know what I had to do and to do it throughout the year. And I wouldn't want to have to keep running to you to do everything.
Okay. Questions? Raman.
As USO, you have to eat thin in an exercise. Obviously, most guys like to last longer than men. How do you slept with the pressure this year, and if not, what would you like to see and why?
Can we get a serious question in, please? Yes.
If you could be any superhero, which superhero would you be and why in like your role?
I think it'd probably be Spider-Man, because I think in this role you need to get the attention of lots of different people and get them to do things, and a really good way of getting their attention and making sure they don't just ignore you is being able to trap them in a spider's web.
I think I'd be Bernard with his watch. I appreciate he's not a superhero, but more time always helps, especially with a job with this level of commitment and responsibility. And then, if ever I cocked up, I could always rewind time and make things better again.
I think I'd go for Captain America, because he's a bit of a nerd. You know, he's not that well known. He's not that well liked at the start, but he's not afraid to make a fool of himself in order to get his job done, and he's willing to do whatever he has to do to serve. In this case, it would be the JCR, even if he looks like a complete knob. So yeah, that would be my choice.
I'd be the Flash. I think that speed is key and punctuality is key in terms of assistant treasurer's role. I think it's important to get the internal accounts done on time. I think the Flash is also got quite a badass costume. Big fan of the red lycra myself. Better than Spider-Man's. I'd have to do the Flash.
Okay. More questions from the floor? Yeah.
If you could join a class of society that you're not already a member of, which one would it be and why?
I remember before I came and they had the leaflet with the various societies in that they were advertising an ice cream society, and I love ice cream. It's my favourite thing. Well, one of them. And I'm very disappointed that I haven't been able to find it anywhere, so if anyone can tell me how to, then I'd love to join that one.
I've been in a lot of castle societies. I have been here a year longer than these three guys, and I've tried pretty much everything I'd like to do. But when I was canvassing this week, I went into the room of a fourth year who I must admit I'd never met before, and the conversation turned from me trying to canvass her into her trying to convince me to model in her life drawing class. So it's not a castle society, it's actually a uni society, but it's, the president is at castle. I would be interested in doing that because it's something I would never have considered, and I think it'd be funny.
I would join our most recently ratified society, the Allotment Society. I think that it's got a lot of potential going for it, and I'm a big fan of root veg.
The two controversial ones would definitely be EPC and the Feminist Society. But no, in a serious note, probably Chapel Choir. Myself and Mr. Brown actually kind of got roped into a semi-audition in the first or second week of freshers, and if I had slightly more talent in the vocal department, that's definitely the society I'd like to join.
I have a question, and it is, do you think the role of USO strengthens or weakens the three parts that go into it?
I would answer differently for each of the three parts. I think it massively strengthens the DUAU, or Sports and Societies, role. I think it massively strengthens the Treasurer's role, because I think those two, or the Deputy Treasurer, whatever it's called at the moment, role, because both of those two could do with being amalgamated, and knowing the basics of both, because they're both so related to the societies and sports in Castle, is very important. But I do think it could potentially weaken the role of DSU rep, because I feel that there's a lot of meetings to go to with Team Durham, with the Students' Union, with the uni as a whole, as Sports and Societies rep, and there also is as DSU rep. And I think in some ways it's good for people to see fresh faces from every college and have fresh ideas on the table. And if you are meeting with similar people, or the same people even, for different reasons, it might get to a point where they're bored of you and they want someone else to come along and give new ideas from college. So I have a feeling, I would think possibly could weaken that role, but the other two I think would strengthen.
I believe that overall it strengthens the entire role. I believe that it's still an exec position, which stands for a lot in this college. I don't think it takes any of the, the reputation away from the DSU rep. I think it's still 1/3 of now an entirely threefold strong role. The DSU rep is obviously an important role. The representation role is something I'd be very keen to be a part of. The sports role, it's been heightened, but I know Doug did a lot of work this year anyway and didn't really feel he got enough credit for it. So I believe making an exec position maybe qualifies that. And the same for Cheer, assistant treasurer. Cheer's got a lot of work to do, but I suppose it somehow lacks the encouragement to do it as quickly or as rapidly. I believe that creating an exec position for it only strengthens all three positions.
I think it massively strengthens every facet of the role, purely in terms of credibility and accountability. The way the assistant treasurer works at the moment, not on the exec, not many people know who he is or what he's doing, and so by putting it on the exec makes it massively accountable and massively available to everyone what he's actually doing. Again, like Johnny and Dexter have both said, the sports gives it the credibility. I think, and also with the DSU as well, the credibility of having more responsibility, more to do. When dealing with people, Team Durham are notoriously difficult to deal with. They don't talk to each other, and it's a nightmare trying to get stuff sorted. But having the credibility of being on the exec and having the other facets of the role as well, it gives you a bit more weight behind your role, more credibility, and it makes it easier to get things done. It will still be hard, but I think it just gives it credibility and massive accountability as well. If things aren't getting done, people know exactly whose fault it is and where it is.
I'd agree with that. I think it was a fantastic innovation, whoever idea it was, to combine these roles. because the reason it was changed is that the DSU rep, for as far back as anyone here can remember, was won unopposed by a fresher, and now we've got 4 strong candidates competing for it. I think that can only be a good thing for the role. A problem with the DSU rep as it was is that they were as much or more a servant to the DSU as to Castle, and the great deal of work that Kevin does often isn't seen by us here. With this role, the USO, you have the anchor in college with the sports and societies and dealing with the accounts and that sort of thing, which gives you greater sway, I think, on both sides, both in college and outside of it.
Okay, any more questions from the floor?
You've all really been focusing on the sports and society side of the role. So what experience do you have in terms of the DSU? Have you been to any meetings with the DSU, or what do you know about how it works, things like that?
I'll admit, over the course of the last 2 years, I've not been as heavily involved in the DSU as I'd like to be. Last year, my time was dominated by the Castle Sport and Societies aspect of the role. This year, I've been to a couple of meetings. PJ and I are both on the committee for the refurbishment of the DSU. We're both very keen and passionate towards that. I suppose a big claim to fame, I live with Kevin. I know the meetings he goes. I know the meetings he goes to in a week. That's all I'm afraid.
I'll be brutally honest, in terms of council meetings, joint com, everything like that, I've never been to a meeting. Last year I thought the DSU was completely irrelevant and didn't affect us in any way at all. I have come to change my opinion of that, purely because of the way the university's going, and I think if we aren't involved in the DSU more heavily as a college, I think we will just get ignored, and who knows, a few years down the line what could become of our college. And I think the DSU is the answer to that. Like Dexter said, the redevelopment of the DSU is something I feel very strongly about. I think a massive part of the reason the DSU as a building, Dunelm House, doesn't get used at the moment by us, which is a bit strange seeing as we pay for it, is because we don't go there, and there's not a reason to go there. I think the redevelopment, okay, guys in second, third year probably won't see it, freshers probably won't see it either, but if we are really, really heavily involved as a college in sorting that out and getting things put in there that we want to see, things like an extra bar, who knows, a cafe, that's the whole point of this role, is that I'm asking people in college what they want to see in it. And I feel really, really strongly that 4 or 5 years down the line, whenever this redevelopment is achieved, that we should have had a strong say in it, so that there's a DSU that students want to use.
I have been quite heavily involved in DUC, which is a very large subsidiary of the DSU, and I think you can see the ways, you can see DUC rep as quite analogous to the DSU rep in the way that you do things in the university as a whole and filter them back down to colleges. The current DUC manager has been elected by an outstanding majority to be the new DSU president, and I'm hoping to make a similar sort of sidestep. It means that I'm in and out of the DSU a few times a week, and have things to do there, know my way around, and go to the various finance offices and that sort of thing. And I'd hope to do a lot more of that next year.
As a fresher, my opinion of the DSU was pretty much wholly bad. I didn't know why it existed, I didn't know what the point of it was, and I haven't ever been to anything like council, I haven't ever sat on any of the committees in the DSU, but I have been involved in loads of societies and done loads of things where you have to go back to the DSU as the last point. I've been a DJ on Purple Radio this year. I'd never considered it before. I thought about it, I went for it, and that couldn't happen without DSU. I've written for Palatinate quite a few times in the time I've been here. That couldn't happen without the DSU. In my first year, most of you won't know me in my first year, I did spend all my time doing acting. I did loads and loads of plays, and a lot of the funding and the grants awarded to directors and producers trying to do plays and set up theatre companies from scratch comes through the DSU. And there's a whole range of things the DSU does. And so I want to show everyone else that that's, I don't know a lot about the DSU, but I'm keen to know a lot. And I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing, that I'm going into it with a clear mind and with a lot of good things.
Okay, can we get one last question, please? Yes, you.
Could you justify the reasons we still have a DSU? If you're going to be a DSU rep, people think we can have a DSU together. Why should we have a DSU?
Pure and simple, Hugh. Without a DSU, we couldn't have a college, because we as a college do no teaching, nothing like that. We are purely a body of students with a bar, essentially, on a very stripped back level, with a few clubs and societies that we play sport. Without a DSU, there wouldn't be the legal advice, the financial advice, the welfare advice, and the mechanism with which to facilitate everything we want to do. The liaison with the university is done through Prescom and the DSU. Without the DSU, it wouldn't be able to happen. It is massively important, like I said earlier as well, especially we are 700 odd students out of 11,000 undergrads, 15,000 if you take it as a total student body in Durham. We are a tiny minority. As a college, the university aren't going to listen to us about big issues that we want changing, and in the next few years that's going to get increasingly more important. As a strong voice in the DSU, a college leading the way, we've got a big say as representatives of that 11,000 people, undergraduates in Durham, saying what we want to see, and saying that actually see university, most of the students don't want this, what the hell are you playing at, sort your act out. So in that sense, the DSU is massively important. I know that we are slightly different in a collegiate university, but the sabbatical officers up there are elected for an entire year. They've done their degree, they are trained, they are even paid to do a job which, the guys on the exec, the prime focus of their final year at university has to be their degree, like it or not. That's why you're at university. That's not to say they're not committed. I certainly will be committed, but if I get it. But those guys up in the DSU have that role for the entire year, and that's all they're doing, and we should certainly make the most of that. At the moment, I don't think we do. I think you're right in that sense, but I think we absolutely should, to make things life easier and run smoother for us. And like I say, in the future of the university, who knows what the powers that be want to do to change our college lifestyle and the campus and everything like that, and the DSU is the way we can get our voice heard.
I agree with all of that. You can't expect 16 diverse voices from different colleges to be listened to. The entire point is that you have one relatively unified voice that can campaign for things that undoubtedly we all want, lower prices and better standards, essentially. But I'll try and give a few concrete examples of what the DSU could do for us. We can do an awful lot here in college, and we've got an awful lot going for us. But with only less than 1,000 people, there's only so much we can do. I'm sure a lot of you got your contracts for your houses signed or checked at the DSU. You can't expect the college to provide that sort of service. From the stuff I do with welfare, I know that a lot of the campaigns, a lot of the information is given to us through the DSU. If we had to seek that out ourselves, then More Than Live would have an almost impossible job. Then again, something that could be done more in the future, we are, as I said earlier, extraordinarily limited for space here in college. Things that we can't fit in here can very easily be moved into the DSU when it's refurbished, and it can be like an extra extension of college, I think.
For me, the main purpose of the DSU is to provide services and training and money that we couldn't afford to be without as a standalone college. Representation, I don't think there's an awful lot that the DSU does that couldn't be done by a president committee. I don't think there's a lot of power that the DSU has in terms of representation, but I think what's very important is the people who work full-time at the DSU, the sabbatical officers we employ, the training they provide, and the money, the money that all of that costs, and we couldn't afford that as a standalone college.
I agree with all that's been said before. I think the DSU's got such serious potential to be the main hub of the university life. I mean, I for one am so proud of our college and how the collegiate system works within Durham. I do think that DSU is underused and undervalued because it has potential. I mean, the building is hideous at the moment, but as they are revamping that in due course rather, and they can offer a lot more than just their one-off aerobics classes or yoga classes or spinning classes, whatever they do offer during the week. The DSU has the potential to be an important ally towards college and cast particular, but all colleges. For example, with Cuths. This year, the whole drama they've had first term, this term with no hot water, no heating for any of their freshers' accommodation. The DSU needed to be a strong force in respect to the whole college system, and they had to go appeal to their own college office to get compensation and be reimbursed for all their fees. I feel if we lose that aspect of a DSU governing body, then we lose our most important ally in the whole university.
Okay, that concludes our hustings of USO, so please can we have a round of applause for these.